watching NotesIn9.
Hello, and welcome to Notes9. I'm David Leedy. Episode 117, Using the Navigator Control, Doing More with Less XPages. I'm pleased to welcome John Jardin back onto the show. John is a great friend. He's a great friend of the show. He's a great friend to me. He's also an IBM champion in the South Africa area. He works at Ukuvumu, I believe it's pronounced, Solutions, I think it is, ukuvumu.co.za. And you can see his email address and his Twitter accounts. And he does a lot of training and mentoring and mobile development and Notes and XPages and all these other technologies and jQuery and Accelerator, and I could go on, most likely. So if there's a technology you need help with, he probably can do it. So feel free to contact him if you have any questions or have any business help, basically. Okay, so today he's going to come on and talk about the navigator control. And I love these notes and nines when it's just basically just about this control, how to use it, how to kind of get into it and just start doing some things. So what he's going to do is kind of show you how to use this navigator control that comes with the update pack or the extension library or Domino 9. And that gives you your menu on the left hand side. He's gonna do something a little different here. Is he's gonna kind of show you how to use that to combine what could be two X pages into one X page by basically putting the content of two pages onto a single page through custom controls, and then you can kind of control the rendering on it. He'll show you how to set the rendering to display the one you want based on navigator click, and he gets into the events of the navigator, which quite honestly I haven't really paid that much attention to myself. So and the submit value, and it's really good stuff. So that's what he's going to talk about. Before we get into the show, I just had a couple things I just wanted to highlight here. Is while he's giving you a good example on how to do this, there's also another control out there called the dynamic content control, which kind of will do a similar thing in a way. And it may give some better performance. I'm not 100% sure, but I kind of think so, which is why I'm even mentioning it. So for a more robust solution, the next step up might be to integrate the dynamic content control in there. My understanding is it gives a little better performance because that's controlled at a higher level. But I could be wrong. Also, don't miss the fact that his designer probably doesn't look like yours. He's moved some things around in his designer for a personal preference, and I think a lot of people forget is you can actually customize this stuff, and you can move your panels around and your controls and your outlines around and whatever you want. So it's built in Eclipse, so take advantage of that. Now, the one thing in his solution, which I think is kind of funny because I've been talking to Martin Rolfe about this through Twitter, is when you do something like he's going to demonstrate with the dynamic or not the with the rendering or so having two X pages into one, the question comes up is how do you bookmark that? How do you bookmark an individual page on there? And Martin Rolfe was on Twitter asking that question. We had a little talk. Going back and forth, and he told me he solved that, and he's got a technique, I guess, that he's using, and I invited him onto the show, so I hope he comes onto the show and gives us that technique. So I'm calling him out, I guess, a little bit, but in the nicest way I can, not like when I call Withers out because he has issues. So anyway, that's enough about all that stuff. So let's go to John's demo on how to use the navigator control.
Hi everyone and welcome to this video. I'm John Jardin from Ukuvuma, and today I'm going to show you how to use the navigator control from the XPages extension library to modify content on your page without having to use multiple XPages. Let me give you a quick example of what I mean. So over here I've got a very basic layout. I've got the navigator on the left hand side and I've got a custom control populating content on the right. If I click on Show Info 2, you'll notice that the content on the right was modified. Everything sort of stayed the same. But if you look on top here, our X page was changed as well. And if I go back to Show Info 1, the X page is now on showinfo1.xsp. Now, many might be fine with this. I usually don't like going this route. I try to use as few X pages as possible and dump everything inside custom controls and application logic. So this is what I would do instead. If we go to this example, I've got an info both final.xsp, the very same layout, and if I click on Show Info 2, you'll see the content on the right is modified, but the X page stayed the same. And if I click on Show Info 1, again, the content on the right is different, but the X page is the same. So let me go and show you how to do this. Let's close this over here. In my database, I've got a few design elements. We've got a default layout custom control, and all I'm using over here is the application layout from the XPages extension library, and I've got drop targets on the left and the middle column so that I can go and place content inside it. I've also got a CC menu custom control, which is just my navigator with two navigator items that are pointing to the two XPages that I have. I've then got a custom control called CCInfo1, and this has just got a panel with a label, and the same for CCInfo2, it's a panel and a label. Finally, I've got two XPages, Info1 and Info2. Under Info1, I'm using the default layout custom control, and I've dropped the menu to the left and CCInfo1 custom control to the middle. I've done pretty much the same thing for Info2, except that I'm using CCInfo2 custom control for the middle. Alright, so we're going to do some modifications over here. First up, we're going to create a new XPage, and we're going to call it Info Both. What I'm going to do is drag the default layout custom control, because I do want to use it, and we're also going to drag the CC menu to the left hand section, because we're going to want to use that as well. But what we're going to do now is we're going to go and put both custom controls into the middle section. And if you know anything about XPages, you'll know that you have to provide some sort of wrapper for editable areas, otherwise you can't place more than one direct control inside. Don't worry too much about what I said over there, just you'll see immediately what I mean if you try it by yourself. Okay, so I've placed a panel in the middle, and inside the panel I'm going to go and put the two custom controls. So that's great, that's perfect. If I go back to my outline, you'll see that I've got the panel with the two custom controls inside it. I want to give the panel a name as well. I'll just call it Panel Both for now. I'm happy with that. And we can save and close our XPage. We're actually done with this XPage. We don't need it for anything else. So now, let's go to our custom controls. If we go to CCInfo1, the only thing that I want to do here is I want to provide the panel with a name as well. So I'll call it Panel Info 1. And the reason why I want to do this is because I'm going to manipulate this panel using server-side JavaScript. And in order to get a handle on it, you need to give it some sort of ID. So we're calling it Panel Info 1. And I'm going to go do the same thing for Info 2. Alright, we are done with the two custom controls. So all that's left is the menu. So let's go inside here, and let's go see what we have running. We've got two page link nodes. Now, page link node, it's there so that you can run, so that you can open up XPages. This is not something that we want to do. We want to rather run some code instead. So I'm going to remove these two page link nodes, and I'm going to go and add basic nodes instead. I'm going to change that to show info 1 and change this to show info 2. Alright, that's good for now. So the question is, we're using basic nodes. How do we manage the on-click events of these nodes? If I quickly save this and I build the application and preview it in the browser, let's just see where we are right now. So I want to load the Info Both XPage. No errors, no errors. Thank you. Alright, so this is exactly what I was expecting. On the left-hand side, you've got your navigator. Yeah, that's all good. On the right-hand side, both controls are showing because we put both of them on the same XPage. So there's a few modifications we're going to want to make to this. Number one, we want to start off with only showing the first custom control and having the second custom control hidden. So let's go back to the custom control CCInfo2, and what we're going to do for this panel is we're going to say as a default it's not visible. Save and close. That will sort out this issue so that only this shows when we load the page for the first time. But now we've got a little bit more of a task here. We have no on-click events for this. We have to go and create these click events. So going back to CC menu, going back to the navigator items, we're not going to use this on-click. It allows you to run client-side JavaScript code. Instead, what I want to do is I want to use the navigator's on-item click event. This allows me to run server-side JavaScript. Okay. So if I click on this and I go and put some code inside here, this is, yeah, we'll get to the code now. John, relax, we'll get there. Alright, so let's go quickly back to the navigator items. The question we have over here is, how do I know what I'm clicking between these two items, and how do I go and tell my code what was actually clicked? Alright, so it's quite simple. There's a submit value property for each one of these basic nodes. And what this does is it will send the value you specify here back to the context object which runs on your X page. So I want to send back a value called info1. And for show info2, I want to send back a value called info2. Very simple. Just remember info1 and info2. So coming back to the navigator's on-item click event, we can now go and add the JavaScript that I was excited to add earlier on. Remember what I said earlier on? It returns that submitted value to the context object. And we use the context.getSubmittedValue to get a handle on that value that was sent. And now we can go and add some logic to the page. So we'll use a JavaScript switch statement on the submitted value that's returned. And we'll say, okay, there's two options. It can either be info1 or it can be info2. So we've got handles now. This is good. Now what we need to do is we need to go and write some code to say, okay, fine, if it's info1, what do you want to do? If it's info2, what do you want to do? And it's actually quite easy. We use the get component. We get a handle on our panel info1 that's in our CC info1 custom control, and we say that we set rendered, and we want to set the rendered to true. Even though it is true, it will just set it to true again. So don't worry too much about that. But at the same time, we want to set panel info2, the rendered property, to false. End off with a break. That's part of JavaScript. Okay. So let's copy this, paste it over here. Just switch these two around, just in case we get some weird results. So we're saying over here, when they click on info2, we want to set the panel to true, and for 1 we want to set to false. And there's our code. Okay, so we can save that, and let's quickly go and see what happens. So let's go back to our X page. Alright, so good start. We're only showing the first custom control. It's hyperlinked. Okay, that's also another good start. If I click on show info1, okay, that seems to be fine. Show info2, that seems to be fine. Alright, so now we're modifying the right-hand content on the same X page, but we are performing full refreshes on the page. That's not necessary. Instead, we want to just go and do a partial refresh. So if I go here, and I say partial update, and I say I want to do a partial update on the panel in my X page info both, and it's called panel both. Alright, so I want to go and do a partial update to panel both. So let's go try that again. Well, that's working like a dream. Okay, excellent. So there's one thing that left. There's one thing that I would like to still do here, and that is to provide a selected value on the left-hand side so that we know what we're selecting. If we go back to the Navigator property, you'll see that show info 1, there is a property called selected with a true or false value. Now we can't just say true or false because it depends on what gets clicked. What we can do is we can go and add some server-side JavaScript to say, okay, fine, if context dot get submitted value is the same as, what are we on now? Show info 1. Info 1. And that will return true or false. And we can do the same for show info 2. So let's quickly see what happens. Okay, it's still working, but we're not getting the result. And why? Because we are only providing a partial refresh on this section over here. We're not doing a partial refresh on the menu. So we kind of need to perform two partial refreshes. Either two partial refreshes, or we need to wrap the application layout in a div, or if we're lucky, we can maybe just give our layout a name and we'll call it layout 1. Save this, and here on the partial refresh, we refresh layout 1 instead of just refreshing the middle content. Let's see what happens there. So this is working now, but what's not working is the right-hand content. So layout 1 is not the way to go. So we can't just say, I might have been mistaken. Let's just try application layout 1. I might have added an ID to something that I shouldn't have. I apologize for that. Mistakes happen. Let's just try that one more time. Back on track. Okay, so now we've got selected values on the left-hand side, and we're doing modifications on the right-hand side, all by using partial refreshes and one XPage. So just quickly, there's many ways to perform partial refreshes. You can do so using the XSP object in client-side JavaScript. You can go and create some panels to manage what you refresh. It all depends on you. Obviously, what you want to do is you want to refresh as little content on the page as possible. But for this example, I think I proved my point. The last thing that I want to show before we end off is, notice when we load the page for the first time, show info 1 is not selected by default. That's because the get submitted value or the submit value hasn't sent anything to the context object. So there's a small little trick to fix that. And go to show info 1, and here by selected, instead of just writing this piece of code that will say, okay, fine, return true if there's an info 1 value returned, we will rather just go and say var submitted value is equal to context.getSubmittedValue, and if submitted value is not equal to info 2, then return true, else return false. Dear IBM, please auto create some of the brackets when entering. Thank you. Alright, now what we've done over here is we're saying that so long as the submitted value returned is not info 2, it has to be info 1. It's a quick little trick in our scenario to make sure that there's always a selection even though you're loading the page for the first time. So if I go and build and preview again, Show Info 1 will always be selected unless you go and click on Show Info 2. Alright, I hope this was entertaining to everyone. I hope you learned something. And yeah, thank you for your time. And until next time, have a good day. Bye.
And that's the demo. I thank John for coming on. I know I already have another show for him, and I know I've been sitting on these two for a while, so you're going to see that very soon. And if you have any questions for me, here's my contact information, and I thank you for your time.